Good morning. My name is Saba Wahid, and I am the Research Director at the UCLA Labor Center. Welcome to the launch of our study, Unseen Cost, Workers and Learners in Los Angeles County, as well as our supplemental report on COVID-19. We have media in our Zoom, and we have our friends viewing live on Facebook. Welcome to everyone, and just wanted to let you know this webinar is being recorded. The reports and this webinar is a collaboration between the Dolores Huerta Labor Institute at the Los Angeles Community College District, the UCLA Labor Center, as well as the UCLA Labor Studies and the Institute for Research on Labor and Employment, the California State University Long Beach American Studies program. But this research would not have been possible without the 454 students and our faculty partners across the community college, CSU, and UC system in Los Angeles. They collected surveys, they contributed to the analysis, they made all of this happen. So tell us in Facebook chat if you played a part in the research. We'd love to hear from you. So for today, we're going to do a background and introduction of what this project is. We'll share key findings from the three main sections of our report, Unseen Costs, followed by highlights from our survey of workers and learners during COVID-19. We'll present a set of recommendations, and at the end, we'll leave time for Q&A. So for those of you on Zoom, you can use the Q&A box or raise your hand and we'll put you in the queue. And if you're viewing us on Facebook Live, Deja and others will be monitoring your questions and adding them to the queue. So be sure to let us know any questions you might have. So our speakers today, it includes a mix of workers and learners who are also researchers through various stages of this project, as well as our team of graduate student researchers and staff from the partner organizations. Each speaker will introduce themselves before they start. So with that, let's get started. I will pass it on to you, Yana.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Yana Sherek Hernandez, and I am a project director with the Labor Center at UCLA and also a faculty member in our Labor Studies program. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our study. We're very excited about this report, which contextualizes the realities of workers and learners in public colleges and universities throughout Los Angeles County. We used a very unique methodology that we call research justice. It's a framework that really centers the voices of workers and learners as experts and as collaborators. And the research that we conducted was from fall 2018 to fall 2019. And this was conducted across the county. And we drew from government data, census data, a literature review, original research of 869 surveys and 79 interviews of people who work and go to public higher education colleges and universities at the same time. So why study the experiences of workers and learners in Los Angeles? Firstly, there are 2.7 million students in LA County, making up 26% of the total population. And these students, or 725,000 of them, are undergraduates. This means that 1 in every 2 undergraduates, or 375,000 undergraduates in Los Angeles County work. And we wanted to understand this experience. On top of that, we know that 60% of workers and learners, regardless of the sector that they work in, earn low wages. Of the students, the undergraduate students in colleges, 82% of them are attending public universities. And of that, 52%, over half, are employed. This is now the traditional face of our students. We wanted to tell you a little bit about the story. We know that community colleges, California State University and University of California, LA, are the colleges in our sample, But prior to the 1980s, a student could graduate from college with little or no debt, secure a living wage job, and then pave their own path to homeownership. Today, however, that landscape has drastically changed. The University of California fees have grown 5 times from the 1970s to today. Cal State University tuition has risen over 900%. And we know that the cost of living in Los Angeles continues to rise. Workers and learners who may have many of their educational costs covered, like financial aid, but they still struggle to pay basic living expenses and to make ends meet. As we noted earlier, half of college students in LA County work, and the majority work in low-wage jobs. This reality has not produced academic or employment infrastructures that support adequately the workers and learners in order to accommodate them. So how workers and learners study and how they work is really important to understand. And they have very distinct and often clashing realities. We believe through this study that the complexities of their experiences really have to be better understood. So our study builds on other research that we've done about young workers and their ability and inability to finish school. And we wanted to really focus this based on other studies that show that overworking often delays college degree completion. In this study, Unseen Costs, the Experiences of Workers and Learners in LA County, we intentionally lead with the term worker. We want to focus this identity because it's often rendered secondary in a lot of the conversations about higher education. And we wanted to lift up that students who work are essential to the California economy. And we want to aim to link and affirm that workers and learners' experiences are connected to other workers, and that we commit to connect their struggles with the fight for all workers. We also choose to focus on the term learners because we want to encompass that there are various types of students in LA County. They are young and old, returning students, part-time students, students who are receiving degrees or certificates. They're in 2-year programs, 4-year programs. And in this study, we feel that it's imperative to focus on the experiences of all learners in our public higher education institutions in LA. So with that, we will look at the study in more detail, and I'll pass it on to my colleague, Preeti.
Thank you so much, Yana, and good morning, everyone. My name is Preeti Sharma. I am faculty at California State University, Long Beach, and I'm in the American Studies program, and I'm also a part of the research team for this study. So I'm going to kick us off by sharing the first main section of our report. Workers and learners in our study shared that they very much value and are dedicated to their education and career goals. However, the jobs that they currently work at do not match their career aspirations. So we found that learners have strong educational goals. 91% of students are committed to completing their degrees. So that includes the 36% who want a bachelor's degree, and even more so, the 56% who want to continue on and earn a master's degree. We also wanted to understand what industries folks are concentrated in, and we found that over half actually work in low-wage service industries, and this is retail and food service specifically. And then the reasons that workers and learners chose to work besides earning money was actually to develop a range of skills. So this includes wanting to develop communication skills, but also to gain experience in a specific industry, just to name a few of the reasons. And then yet, this is really important, and we want to highlight this. Nearly 7 out of 10 workers and learners said that their current job was actually not connected to their future or long-term career, and that even 6 out of 10 said that they were not learning skills at their current job that connects back to their academic major. And at the same time, while scholars talk a lot about the benefits of internships, strikingly, we found that 76% of students have not had an internship in college, and ironically, 80% wanted one. I'm gonna now pass it on to Iris Lopez to talk a little bit more about her experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Iris Lopez and I'm a recent UCLA undergraduate, and I'm also part of the research team for this study. And as a first generation Latina from a single parent household, I knew that finances would play the biggest role in deciding what college I would be attending. I applied to scholarships, but even that wasn't enough, so I had to resort to taking out loans and finding a job. Like myself, 2/3 of workers and learners' parents are unable to support their children's education. So this leads us to finding jobs in the low wage sector that Priti was just speaking on. I first worked at the UCLA Dining Commons for about 2 years. I did this because I knew that they would work with my school schedule, and it was a job. Like, I needed a job that paid and helped me pay for my education. And like myself, a lot of students do this so that they can go to school and know that their job is going to be accommodating to them. And as a student, as a first generation student, I didn't have a lot of experience. So where else was I supposed to look? So I resorted and where I knew where to go. Like myself, nearly 3/4 of workers and learners have some major concern about their ability to finance their education. And financing education is not even the worst of our concern. 1 in 2 workers and learners experience some sort of food insecurity, whether it's skipping a meal or not knowing where our food is going to come from next. Being a worker and learner myself, my biggest concern has always been finances and my ability to finance my own education. Because my mother is a single parent who works in the fields, I felt guilty asking for help because I know that she herself is struggling. Education should not cost us our ability to eat or cause concern over how we're going to be able to pay for our next few units. I feel like this country needs to do better by its people. And thank you. I will now be passing it on to Cindy.
All right, thank you, Iris. My name is Mindy Chen, and I'm faculty co-director of the Dolores Huerta Labor Institute at LA Community College District. I'm also a professor of labor studies at LA Technical College and part of the research team. So Iris has shared her story, and in this section, we're going to go a little bit deeper into, detailing how workers and learners are actually pressed for time and for money, and how the structures of work and education impede their ability to succeed in school. So we surveyed the number of units of coursework that students took to compare to the hours that students work. And we found that 78% of students are taking a full-time load at 12 units or more, with almost half taking more than that. We also found that 35% of students are working at least 30 hours a week. And to highlight the story even more, I'm going to now introduce Leonardo Gonzalez, who is a student at East LA College, and he will share his experience of juggling the demands of coursework and work.
Thank you, Mindy, and good morning, everyone. My name is Leonardo Gonzalez. I am an East Los Angeles Community College student. And my experience is, as Mindy mentioned with our data that we collected, is that I fall into both of these categories, right? As a first generation college student, I have to work. I have to, finance my own education and finance my own form of, living expenses. So I work as a student worker on my college, and it's a great opportunity because, as Iris mentioned previously, they work with your schedule as a student, right? But at times, I found myself working in a department that did not align properly with my actual field of study. And thus, I had to, find internships, which I had the opportunity to do with unions that did align very well with my major. But as the data shows, many of the students are taking a load of over 12 units or more. I currently just finished a semester of taking approximately 17 units, all while working as many other students across LA County over 30 hours a week. Due to COVID-19, I originally only had one job of working 20 hours a week. As a result of COVID-19 and the epidemic that has, unrested our communities, I worked at one point over 60 hours a week, all while juggling the task and the demand of coursework of 17 units. So this is not just an effect that happens to, myself, but it affects many students across LA County because we are left to fight for ourselves and fight for our education, something that we know in the near future will, plan out our livelihood if we're going to be able to have a house in the near future, something that my parents never had the opportunity to have. So I hope that this data really reflects the struggles that students are going through and can pave a way for students to get the help that we do need and help create a better future for our future students that are going to come along the way. I'll pass it back now to Mindy. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story, Leonardo. So let's move on. So again, another way to think about how stretched workers and learners are is that 23% work more than one job. And they're doing this while trying to build their academic portfolio with multiple majors or a minor. So what does this mean in terms of its impact on workers and learners' time? Well, through our research, we found that students are penalized for having to work and go to school, as nearly 7 out of 10 students missed at least one academic opportunity, and 1 out of 5 students missed 4 or more academic opportunities. And to illustrate this in depth, I will now introduce Crystal Hammond, who is a student in multiple LA area community colleges, who will now share her experience.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Crystal Hammond, and I attend SMC, LACC, and LA Trade Tech colleges. And just to highlight some of the struggles that I've been experiencing during COVID-19, the transition to remote learning and online engagement was extremely difficult. I'm a recipient of 3 internships that are focused on community engagement, advocacy, and public policy, which require in-person collaboration and event execution. So when I received the news of the coronavirus outbreak, I panicked because I was uncertain as to how I would receive funding. Social distancing, although for a preventative measure, has put me at a disadvantage as an individual coming from a low income background. Along with transitioning to a new normal, I fell behind on class participation and homework from calling multiple agencies for relief funding and COVID-19 resources. My internship coordinators announced their program changes and support services. However, it was challenging for me to stay engaged. And I know about 1 in 4 workers and learners work more than one job just to get by, and now that was compromised for my situation. I've been able to receive a grant, but that is not enough, and I have yet to hear back from a few organizations on how they can truly support me and my family. And I'll pass it back to Mindy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. So yeah, as Crystal highlighted, it's very, very stressful to again balance the work of balancing workload and work and coursework. So as far as penalties and working and learning, we can really see in more detail from our research that 64% of those we survey rank 63% rank their stress level as 4 or 5 out of a scale of 1 to 5. And that 4 out of 10 students we survey have considered withdrawing or taking a break from school. Finally, as far as reasons for considering withdrawing from school, 40% of our students consider withdrawing or taking a break from school. And as you can see from this slide here, there are a variety of reasons compounded by, again, balancing and juggling the demands of working and learning. And just to highlight the story even more, I'll now introduce Jennifer Mateo, who is a student at LA Pierce College, who will share her experience of such balancing act.
Good morning. Thank you, Mindy. I'm Jennifer Mateo from Los Angeles Pierce College. And ever since we've transitioned to remote learning online, I've been sitting at my desk for 7 to 8 hours a day, reviewing lectures, writing notes, doing homework, while having to make sure I understood the material to continue. After a full 12-unit course, I worked as a nanny, and when I wasn't in school, I would go clean houses with my mother after, just because it was flexible enough for me to stay on top of my schoolwork. But after COVID, I couldn't go to work and contribute to the house. And our professors thought we had more free time and added more assignments, and that is just not the case. At a point, my peers and I wanted to give up on our schoolwork because we were teaching ourselves and it became so overwhelming. But during this time, I knew it was easier to give up, so I just couldn't do that. My brother was also finishing 5th grade through online and saw his workload triple. But it was difficult enough to focus on my schoolwork and trying to make sure he passes the grade as well. I applied to grocery stores and had no luck because of my, quote, lack of experience. So I looked for scholarships and applied, and I was able to pay some bills. I was lucky enough to get a few, but as an earner and learner, I feel we owe that scholarship as soon as it's awarded. The financial penalties of working and learning are real. Juggling our financial need in school and work causes a lot of stress. I, like the 63% of the workers and learners in the study, feel very high levels of stress. Thank you. I will pass it back to Mindy.
All right, thank you, Jennifer, for sharing. And we're now going to move on to the next section of our report finding, finance and hidden costs. So now I'll introduce Michelle.
Thank you, Mindy. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Wong, and I'm a graduate researcher at the UCLA Labor Center. I'm now going to go into the third section of our report, which covers the finances and the hidden costs. And so one of the really core messages here is that economic conditions of the county are unsustainable for workers and learners and their families. So we found that 3 in 4 workers and learners report having some or major concerns about financing their education. And that, as Iris and some others have mentioned earlier, finances are a major concern, and they don't feel comfortable always asking for help from their families, knowing that they're struggling too. And so our findings also support that, showing that, cost of living and education impacts workers and learners' families, with 2/3 of parents unable to support their children's education. And that often means workers and learners are also managing multiple expenses, with 57% reporting that household expenses related to rent, food, and transportation as their primary expense. And that even with the financial aid and work, 1 in 2 workers and learners experience food insecurities. So that could be anything such as skipping meals, having disrupted eating patterns, or lacking nutritionally balanced meals. And we also found that 1 in 3 workers and learners face housing insecurity issues, such as difficulties paying for rent, having to move in with others, and moving multiple times. And finally, despite taking on work, including long hours and or multiple jobs, 63% of workers and learners were late or delayed paying expenses such as books, household expenses, and credit cards. And now I'm going to pass it on to Sierra Hudson and have her talk a little bit more about her experience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra Hudson, and I just graduated from UCLA with a degree in sociology and a minor in labor studies. I also was an undergraduate researcher on this project. I was part of many workers and learners who faced housing and financial challenges during this time of COVID-19. 1 in 2 of us lost a job. 1/4 of us were unable to pay for rent. And about 1/4 of us were unsure if we could pay for food and other necessities. Before COVID-19, I even had to pick up extra work from babysitting and tutoring despite having financial aid, work study, and student loans. But in the wake of the pandemic, that extra income vanished. I was stuck with having to decide, do I pay for rent or do I pay for food? I missed both rents for April and May. I was very stressed out as I did not know if I would be evicted. I did not know if I would be able to pay for rent. I was also experiencing the transition to remote learning, which was a struggle. I was finally granted financial help from the CARES Act, but this took a few months to process and receive. Not only was I extremely overwhelmed with my finances, I also experienced severe anxiety from having to live alone because my roommate, an international student, had to return back to her home country. I was isolated, alone, stressed, and depressed. I went from a studious straight-A student from one who missed assignments and sometimes class. I was feeling very hopeless, and at one point in the quarter, I almost dropped out. Being a worker and learner forces you to be resilient. Like, we have no choice, and it's like we're constantly battling this kind of survival mode. Thank you, and I will be passing it to Sophia, who will go more into depth of COVID.
Thank you, Sierra, for your story. As we've heard, multiple learners have been juggling both work and school prior and during COVID-19, and we do find that COVID-19 exacerbates the inequalities that we've already identified in the larger report, Unseen Cost. The next findings that I'll be covering are based off 236 surveys that we collected over a 2-month period beginning in April 2020. So we find that the sudden shift to remote learning has jeopardizes workers and learners' educational experiences. So for example, 59% of workers and learners reported that some or all of their course materials were difficult to understand. And then we find that 1/3 of workers and learners are considering taking a break, something that Sierra voiced. And finally, when it comes to their work experiences, we find that workers and learners face insecurity. So 1 in 2 were laid off, terminated, or furloughed. And then another half did see that their wages decreased or fluctuated. And then when it came to the workers and learners who continued to work during the pandemic, 69% of them were concerned about their safety. And to illustrate some of the findings, we'll be hearing from Isabel, who will talk about her experiences during the pandemic.
Thank you, Sophia. My name is Isabel Saucedo, and I am a recent graduate from Cal State University Long Beach, where I majored in English with a minor in American Studies. My work experience, I worked at a restaurant my entire college career, and just like the 1 in 2 workers who experienced some form of unemployment and the 2/3 who dealt with some form of workplace insecurity, I was no exception. I worked at a restaurant, and on March 16th, I became aware of the LA County order, the stay-at-home order that ordered restaurants to close for dine-in. On March 17th, my employer contacted me and let me know that we would be closing for dine-in, but would still be open for to-go orders, and that I was still part of the family. So I spent some time waiting to hear back about my schedule until I finally found out that our stores would be closing for to-go as well. So I immediately applied for unemployment, and I realized that I had no clue what to mark, whether I was terminated, laid off, or furloughed. And it wasn't until I called my HR department that I found out that I was indeed furloughed. My unemployment actually came about fairly quickly compared to my peers who I know dealt with waiting for a couple of months even without any sort of income. But my family did, however, still deal with some sort of, other financial hurdles, as neither one of my parents qualified for unemployment or the stimulus check, and I as a student didn't qualify for the stimulus check. I actually didn't receive more direct relief until the CARES Act was awarded to me thanks to Cal State Long Beach. And yeah, now that restaurants in LA are being allowed to reopen, my financial worries are actually just morphing more into the workplace insecurity that 69% of workers and learners experienced as essential workers. It's just become more intense or amplified because now I just worry for my safety in a restaurant. In a restaurant with 230 people capacity and maskless guests, I am frankly terrified. The CDC warns people with high risk to take extra precautions, but it seems kind of impossible to do in a workplace setting. And I just don't know that I'm going to feel safe, even though that they deem it safe. I don't know if I will feel safe given my own risks. And yeah, above all, I'm just really overwhelmed that I have to choose between my health and safety and that of my families, and an ability to provide income for them or pay for my studies in the future. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to Sophia. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. So one of the other things that we do find is that workers and learners continue to face housing and financial challenges. So when the pandemic, during the pandemic, workers and learners, 27% of them experienced housing changes. Some of it was due to having to move back with family, or even being asked to vacate student housing. And then similar to our big report, we find that 1/4 of them were unable to pay rent. And some of the workers and learners also discussed about how they reported additional responsibilities. So during the pandemic, 59% were having to help with extra household duties, and then 34% were having to found an increase regarding their financial responsibilities. And to talk a little bit more about this, I will introduce Brittany.
Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Montaño. I am an undergraduate researcher at UCLA. And at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was transitioning into a new job. With the stay-at-home orders, my start date got delayed from March to June. Along with the uncertainty of an income, my spring quarter classes were all pushed online. My laptop was not up to par for the high demand of Zoom calls and Google Hangouts for my lectures and my volunteer work. I ended up buying a new laptop and charging it on my credit card. Although I applied for a tech grant, I didn't get notified till week 8 of my classes that I received the grant. As for my family dynamic, I had to step up and aid my younger siblings with their schooling. My brother is autistic and has severe dyslexia, so the support and aid he would get in the classroom through his IEP was completely gone. Along with that, my mother is a high school teacher, so she had to work around the clock with the learning curve of online teaching, and my father is an essential worker, working 40+ hours and being on call. I had to help more around the house, whether it was with my siblings' schooling, cleaning, or cooking. So my family endured a lot of stir fries. Like my fellow undergraduate researchers and myself, workers and learners are facing additional responsibilities during the pandemic, including 59% of us facing additional household duties and 34% of us facing financial responsibilities, which has affected our performance in online classes and beyond. The pandemic has ultimately amplified the inequities of the workers and learners experience within Los Angeles County. On that note, we have next Deja Thomas, who will be presenting the recommendations portion.
Hi everyone, my name is Deja Thomas. I'm also a graduate researcher who worked on this project at the Labor Center. So I'm just going to go over some of the recommendations that we all came to based on all the data, as well as all like the stories you've heard from these amazing worker learners. And so when we're looking at recommendation 1, the biggest thing is to really support workers as learners and learners as workers. We know both labor and educational spaces really need to, really understand that folks hold both of these identities and really understand how can we conceptualize better conditions for working students. And to that end, we particularly suggest providing worker rights training and protection to all workers, including those who are students, so that they understand what their rights are as workers, as well as both spaces need to acknowledge work and school commitments and provide institutional support and accommodations for students. And then finally, supporting student unions and workplace organizing efforts alike, because those help get the support and pay students need as a collective. And then when we're looking at the second big recommendation, we're looking at strengthening career and educational pathways for working learners. Work can be beneficial and productive experience for students. We know that they can complement each other. So why don't we strengthen career and educational pathways so that when they're working and it's still setting up for a career pathway, they can get both. And to that end, we're looking at extending accessible career resources and learning tools, supporting paid internships and training. We know internships are jobs that are really useful for career pathways, but if they're unpaid, it doesn't really meet the financial needs. And you put a student in a position to choose to either work multiple jobs so they can take an unpaid, or to sacrifice any other living expenses in order to take that, or just not take the opportunity at all. And then also developing opportunities for networking and mentorship in both spaces so that students can really expand and grow in their career and educational pathways. And then for the third recommendation, the crux of this problem is finance. So we really want to make sure that we're improving the financial agency of all workers and all learners. Students are primarily working for financial reasons, and so they need to be really deeply empowered to be able to not only manage the finances and costs, but really understand like all the decisions that they're making in it. The big one for that is really making college affordable for all. This will really address the financial reasons for working and working so many hours. We also need to provide students with tools to easily navigate in financial systems for students and families as they're making these decisions, so that they're fully aware of like their implications and what that means. And also expanding work study opportunities to all students on a year-round basis. Work study is a program that we exist and we know works, but with the proper expansion and support, it can help more students and it can not leave students hanging for the summer. And then lastly, we're looking at the fourth recommendation being providing holistic support. Because we know that juggling in school, and as these student stories have told you today, it takes a lot on a person. And I think we all can understand that the stress of balancing all of these things. And so how can we provide students with the full support in their other areas of their lives so that the balancing juggling is a little bit easier. And so to that end, we're looking at providing mental health and counseling services to help them navigate all these different responsibilities. Addressing food insecurity immediately, that was a really big thing that came up in terms of choosing between paying for food or paying for rent. And then really looking at increasing awareness about food and housing insecurity. To make sure that all parties, workplaces, labor, education places, etc., everywhere that worker learners are interacting with are aware of this problem and can all work towards fixing it. And then finally, improving public transportation across LA County. That was the one that kind of came up where, because we all know LA is a very, it's hard to get from place to place depending on how far those places apart, even if it's only a few miles. And so and that really limits the opportunities that students can take on as worker learners. And so understanding that improving public transportation across the county also does really help worker learners. And then I'm going to pass it to Jenny, who's going to close this out. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Galvez, and I'm the co-director for the Dolores Huerta Labor Institute and part of the research team. So on behalf of the Dolores Huerta Labor Institute of the LA Community College District and the UCLA Labor Center, we want to thank you for attending today's report launch. We hope that our work provides educators, researchers, policymakers, students, and the LA community members with valuable information, and that as a collective, we build public colleges and universities and employment opportunities that meet students' academic goals, that don't penalize students for having to work and learn, that address the finances impacting the funding of public education, and address the hidden costs that shift the financial burdens onto students and their families. We see that our current forms of operation only exacerbate the obstacles faced by workers and learners during moments of emergency, such as demonstrated by a COVID-19 policy research brief. We thank the workers and learners who participated in our panel today. Thank you. And also the students who participated in our research. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your stories with us. We now want to, the link is in front of you. So we invite you to look at our report. We officially released it right now. Thank you all for attending. And now we turn to Saba for a Q&A component of our program. Please submit questions via Facebook. For those on Zoom, you could raise your hand or submit a question via Q&A. We're more than happy to hear from you and continue sharing more of our research. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So we are at the end of our formal presentation and can now take questions. So for reporters who are on Zoom, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask a question directly to our panelists. We are also gathering questions on Facebook. So if you are watching live on any of our pages, you can put a question. You can put a question into the chat. So first I'll check the reporter room and see if anyone has questions. Please state your name and outlet if you have a question. All right. While we are waiting, I'll just give it another few seconds. Okay, so we actually do have a question from Facebook. So I'll put this to the panelist. So this is from a professor. To what extent do the universities and colleges know about the working patterns of their students? Do they have data on each student to enable them to offer them help with scheduling classes and other assistance? This is from Mike Larkin of Queen's University, Belfast. So why don't we start? I know Mindy had a response to this from the community college perspective.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for your question, Michael. So to some, I would say the answer is yes, but. So I know that speaking from the LA Community College District perspective, I know that administration is working with faculty and students in understanding this. And there has been surveys out to all LA Community College District students that generally survey students' lives. However, I would say the understanding of students' working lives is more like, here's what everything we want to understand about you, students, and how much is financial stress affecting you, how much is food insecurity, job insecurity, etc. I would say there is an effort to understand that our students are working and learning, yet working and learning has not been the front and center focus of research. And this is where we hope to fill in the gap. Our research centers around, as many have mentioned before, the essential struggles and of balancing work and school with again, the understanding that work is a very central part of our students' experience. So our hope is, again, able to, we hope to bridge the gap and help both administrators and faculty treat this essential experience of working and learning as essential, and therefore working towards partnership to build on how to better accommodate students' schedules and their needs. So I hope that partially answered your question, and I'll lean on my colleagues from the other systems if they would like to add.
Great, thank you, Mindy. Before we maybe see if there's someone else who wants to respond, just a reminder that you can use the Q&A functions on any one of our Facebook Live videos. For reporters, you can use the Q&A or you can raise your hand. All right, so it looks like we have a reporter question. Seeing as the pandemic does not appear to be letting up anytime soon, what recommendations do you have for colleges, policymakers to help improve the situation for workers and learners? So someone from our team, let's see, Sophia, do you want to respond to that since you presented on our COVID findings?
Yes, I can go ahead and respond. One of the recommendations that we make, especially concerns like the living experience that workers and learners are having. So as many mentioned, they're still struggling to pay rent, and they're still struggling, they're experiencing food insecurity. So if, you know, one of the recommendations we make is for policymakers to really reconsider the rent policies, especially when it comes to those students who are living on campus, although there's a variety of workers and learners experiences, those that live off campus and on campus. Some colleges have been able to provide food access programs, so really, you know, rethinking about expanding that access so that more students can have, like I said, be able to access, you know, fresh food, and also at a, you know, considering that a lot of them have reduced or fluctuating wages, and then also just really I think having more training for colleges to support faculty when it comes to their use of, technology, being able to also consider providing accommodations. That's something that we ask in the survey, and about half were not aware of accommodations or didn't even know that they could ask for that. So I'm just also thinking about the use of technology in the classroom, especially as we move towards an extension of remote learning.
Great, thank you for that, Sophia. We have another question from Lita Ramos at Cal State LA. Why is the percentage so high for not knowing about internships? And I will ask Preeti to respond to that question.
Thank you so much for that question. One thing that we noted again is that, 7 out of 10 did not have an internship and 8 out of 10 wanted an internship. And part of what we suspect about this is actually structural, in the sense that there are not a lot of paid internships. And then 2, I think it's also about networks and knowing what types of internships are available in the fields that you're interested in. I think part of it also speaks to the types of jobs that are available that offer income, and that just happens to be a concentration of these low-wage service sector jobs like retail or restaurant. And then again, going back to the issue of how we really need more paid internships that can support students' wage and income to be able to do this while going to school.
Great, thank you. So we also have a question from Abel Valenzuela. What are programs, parentheses departments, that are concerned doing to assist students? Do you have any examples to share? All right, so Deja, why don't you start with that question?
Yeah, I think a lot of the data, and I looked really closely at the interviews, is really it came down to like the accommodation and flexibility of both professors and the workplace, is what students really talked about being the thing that made the difference. And they're not necessarily being one particular department, but there was a professor who really understood what they were going through and understood their different responsibilities and juggling, and was able to work with them to make sure that they both understood what they were doing, or even a TA in some examples, and also were able to balance other things and maybe connecting them to other resources. And so those were like the pretty consistent themes around like what made it work for students. And part of that is that, students didn't explicitly say, is at some point the student either has to share on their own volition or the professor has to ask. And I think that's a really important part of, these are students who are dealing with a lot. And so it's also up to professors and departments to take the initiative on their own to also ask, if now we're knowing that there are a lot of students going through this too. I'm not sure if there's anyone else who wanted to also give their own perspective as well.
Yeah, I was seeing if there's anyone from our workers and learners research team. I'm gonna ask Leonardo, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience at ELAC?
Yes, thank you. So my experience at ELAC, so there is a huge, effect on the internships that students can get. At my campus particularly, a lot of the students that attend our college are workers, right? They're workers and learners. And thus, we don't have the opportunity or the financial, security to actually take on an internship that is not paid, for them to keep working as an intern. I've had the opportunity to have many internships, both non-paid and paid. And the opportunity is there, and students have begun to realize that a lot of these internships do require a sense of, free time in their schedules, right? Which does make it very difficult for them to actually, commit and, be motivated to attend these internships frequently. And in my campus, students have taken it upon themselves to, reach out to unions, reach out to, local companies in the nearby area to offer them internships that are paid for. And our college leadership has recognized that and they have actually started to implement classes in our college that are internship paid based. So that course gives you college credit, and it teaches you and encourages you to take on internships, and they help you with peers, mentors, and also with outside resources to actually get an internship that is paid and that is in your field of study. So these classes will really help students long term because it allows them to get out of their comfort zone and get the real work experience that they do need. But that work experience is aligned with their career goals, right? That it's not just work experience from a regular job that they can get paid for, but instead it's a job that is an internship that you can get paid for, but that aligns very well with your actual field of study. So that is one step that we're taking to drastically help students in our college, and I hope that does spread statewide and countywide to allow students to really, enjoy their major while they're studying it, and also get the financial needs, support that they do need in this time of a very stressful epidemic.
Thank you, Leonardo. It definitely helps to get just some concrete programs and solutions. I will pass it on to Brittany, who can talk a little bit about UCLA. And before Brittany starts, I just want to remind folks again that we are taking questions. We have about 10 more minutes left in the webinar. Reporters can put questions in the Q&A or raise your hand, and we can take your question live, as well as questions from Facebook. So great. Why don't we go to Brittany? Tell us a little bit about maybe ideas or solutions you all have.
Yeah, thank you. Just to kind of reiterate what Leonardo said, I think it's very crucial to have accessibility of more awareness of just more paid internships, whether it's through different departments and how it correlates to their major. That would be great to have that more transparency. And also, I think especially within the UCLA campus, we do not have universal transit access. Although maybe we do, UCLA has connections with Lyft or Uber, like for a flat rate coupon that's not accessible for students that have disabilities. So I think we definitely need to ensure that there is accessibility to go to these paid internships across Los Angeles County, because again, Los Angeles County is huge. So just to get out of that Westwood bubble. And then with that, I think that would allow students to understand the different opportunities within LA County, whether they would like to stay and help out. So I think it's just very crucial that they do that, and also within the departments to ensure that students can get credit within various internships to make it more worthy of students' time.
Thank you, Brittany. And I just want to quickly have Isabel respond to this question as well.
Yeah, so I would just like to note that as students, I think we usually have to make a more personal connection with our professors, and are usually the ones to take the first step to make them aware of our circumstances and let them know whether our work life is affecting our school life. So I think that there definitely needs to be more outreach to students who might not be as willing to speak up, and let them know that there is space for, submitting an assignment a little bit later, or that there is a certain understanding between the professor and the student. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. We probably have time for like one or two more questions. Again, if there's any reporters, let us know. But meanwhile, Ashley on Facebook, thank you for your question. This is for the student panelist. How has your involvement in this project changed your outlook as a worker and a learner? Have you become more active in existing social movements? Have you been more vocal about your worker-learner status to professors and employers? Maybe, could I call on Crystal first? Because I know you haven't responded to one of the questions. Yes, yeah.
Sure, Saba. So thank you for the question. I've definitely become more active since the transition, and even before the transition to online learning. And I've even written an open letter to my president at LACC, just addressing some of the challenges that I've been facing along with my colleagues as well. And I feel as though just having the open conversation with administration, being transparent, letting them know, here's what I'm dealing with and what are the solutions, and I'm willing to work with you. And I know that it's not only students that are going through these unprecedented challenges, it's also faculty, staff, everyone's life has shifted to some extent since COVID-19. So I think having open discussion, town halls, inviting students to let them know what resources are available for them, as well as students letting the teachers know I'm opening to listening to the solutions as well. So I've definitely become more active and very proud of it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Crystal. Just a quick note, if you want to contact, you can contact Citlali, who's on the press release, to schedule interviews with any one of these panelists so you can go even deeper on this issue. And also we've shared the links to both of these studies. I'll also put it here on the screen for all of our viewers. And then it actually seems like we're at the end of time. So again, thank you all for attending the launch of our report. It's been 2+ years, like we said, 450 students. We surveyed at every single public university in Los Angeles. We were going all over town, talking to workers and learners, workers and learners talking to each other to make this possible. So we hope you will take the report. We hope that the conversation will continue about workers and learners and really centering their experiences on campuses, because working is now a core part of being a learner. And maybe that's not the way we want things. So let's think about recommendations and solutions. So thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to all of our audience members. And again, reporters, feel free to reach out to us if you would like to do interviews with any of our panelists, and check out the report. Thank you.